Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Saturday, March 29th, 2025. And Trump puts out a Greenland video while Vance is in Greenland. And they're talking about, well, everything to do with helping Greenland be militarily prepared for Russia and China in the Arctic, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems interesting because is this Canada's future? Are we looking into a crystal ball? Carney talks to Trump, who said, wait until after the election. But everybody's framing this as a win and an endorsement of Carney, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds to me like nothing has changed. And all that's happened is the United States said to Canada, wait until you have somebody who wins this next election, and then we'll talk. I don't know what that means for tariffs, but as I said yesterday, it seems like the USMCA is under effect, is in a application, and anything that's not covered under the USMCA will be tariffed, but anything that is covered under the USMCA for the car deal, et cetera, will not be. And so minimal impact on April 2nd as far as I can understand it, but maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Some people were saying, no, there is impact in the comments yesterday. So I'll let you know if there's fallout from this, but it seems like things are going to stay as they are until at least after the election. So we'll see. A Liberal MP calls for another candidate, the Conservative candidate, to be taken to the People's Republic of China to have a bounty collected on them. No, really, seriously, this is a real story that actually happened, and we're going to go through it. Also, another Liberal candidate was just tossed yesterday, removed because of a 2005 stayed assault charge, domestic violence and things like that. And so they removed him. And that's thanks to Juno News reporting, but no credit was given. So what's her name? Oh, I can't remember. The owner of Juno News, not Kean, the other one. Candace Malcolm, she was talking about how the Juno News reports on things and then CBC comes in for the Liberals to fix things. So interesting, maybe, right? Lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start. Now, this is a little bumpy this morning because I was going to start with the tariffs because tariffs were a huge deal yesterday and now, not so much a big deal at all. Everything's fine, smoothed over. Carney yesterday was calling for the end of the relationship between Canada and the United States, which is silly, and you can't do that. And now today everything's cool because him and Trump talked, and Trump is endorsing Carney-ish, but I don't think that's actually true. So I thought that's the biggest story, but also there's all of these big scandals with the Liberals being caught out for doing crazy things like saying, hey, that guy you should take him. Did you know there's a bounty on his head from the PRC and you could collect? That's crazy town. So it's going to feel a little bumpy, I think, this morning, but I think it'll be fine. Dennis says, starting with the crazy stories, Canadian Liberal Party candidate calls for another candidate to be taken to the PRC, People's Republic of China, consulate to be arrested for Beijing. But further than that, there's a bounty on his head. Holy cow. Dennis continues, quote, to everyone here, you can claim the $1 million bounty if you bring him to Toronto's Chinese consulate. Chang reportedly told Ming Pao, a Chinese language media, during an ethnic media conference in January. This community was made in January, so is the Liberal Party all good with this? These are the alleged comments. Be interesting to see what the reply is. Oh, and he's a former police officer too. Wah, wah. That's pretty wild, right? Like, that's pretty interesting stuff. So here is Brian Lilly. He says, I thought this story was crazy and fake. Nope. Check the link and the Liberal MP candidate Paul Chiang's statement below. Paul Chiang encouraged people to take Zhou Te, the Conservative candidate in Don Valley North, to the Chinese consulate to have him arrested. So Paul Chiang says, please see my statement below regarding my comments in Ming Pao News. The comments I made were deplorable and a complete lapse of judgment on the seriousness of the matter. As a former police officer, I should have known better. I sincerely apologize and deeply regret my comments. I will always continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Hong Kong in their fight to safeguard their human rights and freedoms. And so that's interesting. And Andy Lee says, not fake. So she's responding to all of this whole thing as well. She says, this is appalling behavior. Ming Pao reported Liberal Paul Chiang joked about turning Conservative candidate Zhou Te over to the Chinese consulate to collect a bounty placed on his head. What country is he working for? He should be investigated immediately. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty crazy stuff. As a former police officer, and Yang Yizhu says this is a sitting Canadian Liberal Party MP and junior minister at the time. So at the time of the comments, he was a sitting MP. Okay, this happened back in January. Admitting he publicly encouraged people to kidnap his conservative opponent and to deliver him to the Chinese consulate in return for bounty money. Crazy town. Like, that's crazy. Do you think politics are dirty? You ain't seen nothing yet. Darshan Maharaja says, does anyone know how many of the 11 MPs who were said to have been named in the NSICOP report are running for re-election and who they are? We're supposed to be alarmed about foreign interference in our elections, right? Like, yes, no, ish, kind of, sort of. We'll see, I guess. Candace Malcolm says, Juno's News on a different front, but still liberal. Juno News investigated and broke news of Liberal candidate Thomas Keeper's very disturbing past. No media followed up on our reporting. Then Carney's campaign just leaked his resignation to the CBC. So Juno News has real investigative journalism, and Carney's PR fixers are the CBC. The choice is yours, says Candace Malcolm. So yeah, here's more to this story. Kian says, new Liberal candidate Thomas Keeper is a liar. He lied to the police, saying that Kian, got physical with him when I attempted to hand him a list of serious questions that he needs to answer. Instead of coming clean about his past, he's filing a restraining order against a journalist to hide from questions. I'm glad I had my hidden camera rolling to catch him in this despicable lie. So it's 4 minutes long, and Kian goes through it. But the Liberals are what? They don't think reality matters. They don't think people are going to question anything at all. I mean, it's egregious. It's pretty wild. Derek's the editor of Western Standard, I think. I think that, or he's a special reporter. And he says, CBC Calgary fails to credit Kian and Juno News for breaking the story that led to this. Liberals drop Calgary candidate over failure to disclose 2005 stayed domestic assault charge. So he didn't tell them, and, don't ask, don't tell, all the rest of it, until the truth catches up, and then they ignore the reporters and send the fixers to CBC, right? Interesting stuff. Independent Press Gallery, again, on another note, is calling out Mark Carney and his use of police to remove independent journalism. This is kind of censorship, but it's all kind of in the Liberal campaign bag of tricks that they use. Anyway, the Independent Press Gallery says, we condemn ongoing use of police by Mark Carney's campaign to intimidate independent journalists. Twice police were called on peaceful reporters by Liberal candidates this week. So that's pretty crazy. The Independent Press Gallery of Canada strongly condemns the continued mistreatment and police intimidation of independent journalists by the Liberal Party, this time at the direct request of the campaign of Prime Minister Mark Carney. This week, 2 Rebel News journalists were once again forcibly removed from a Carney campaign event by police officers. Despite conducting themselves professionally, the reporters were told that they were being removed solely at the request of the campaign. This marks the second time in mere days the Liberal figures have weaponized police to deter independent reporting. So if you go back just a couple of stories, Juno News did investigative reporting, found a problem that led to the resignation of a candidate, and Mark Carney is now trying to remove independent reporters from doing any kind of reporting at his campaign events, right? So, I mean, what are you afraid of, Mr. Carney, right? Teeth whitener. That is strikes a fear in him, right? It's like water for the green witch in The Wizard of Oz. Ryan Garrettson says, those hard hats and high-vis vests on everyone in this clip are brand new. Is everything staged? So this is Mark Carney. And yesterday I was listening to some YouTube thing that I'm down a rabbit hole for a project that I was listening to it, and they were talking about findafriend.com or rentafriend.com, and how this was a useful thing that was not for hookups. It was absolutely not for hookups. The site is explicit that it's not for hookups. It is for doing exactly things like this, bringing people out to events like this where these guys get paid whatever their agreed upon amount is, but you have access to a whole bunch of people who are in whatever geographical location you're in, and you can just bring people out, right? And there are other examples of this. The Meng Wanzhou case was, I'm probably saying her name wrong, but she had protesters that were paid. At the time, Craigslist was used as a recruiting tool, and they've evolved their recruiting tools now. But isn't that interesting, right? It seems like, and I don't know if that's true, right? I don't know if they're using rentafriend.com or anything to that effect, or a service like it, but it just seems interesting to me that all these services exist. And I mean, I don't know any working people who would want to stand there with Mark Carney, right? I was talking to a bunch of roofers the other day, and they're not interested in what Mark Carney's selling, right? So anybody with a high-vis vest is aware that this guy's a snake in the grass, right? And so, we'll just hire some people and put a high-vis vest on. Hire some people, buy some high-vis vests, and bingo, bango, bongo, you've got a construction crew, right? Here we go. Oh, sorry, that's possibly too loud. No Mark Carney talking clips there, right? No audio of him saying anything. Why? Because he's boring and people would fall asleep. Here's YEG Wave says, Armeet Sohi has now ditched anything Edmonton mayor related from his social media account as he takes a shot for MP, right? So there you go. MP candidate. So his Twitter profile says he's an MP candidate for Edmonton Southeast. It's time to build together because we are strong, Canada strong. So, I mean, yowza. The Liberals are planning to shoehorn themselves in and say, no, the citizens really, really wanted this. I don't think that's true whatsoever. Nikki says Global Affairs Canada in the first 2 months of 2025, that's this year, have approved the funding of Oxfam to the tune of $83 million. $83 million and change. And guess who used to be the VP of Oxfam in Quebec? And it's Pablo Rodriguez. Sure is, right? Pablo Rodriguez. And there you go. He's the Quebec Liberal leader wannabe, Pablo Rodriguez. Why are we giving over $80 million to an NGO with such low ratings and demonstrated impact, with only 54% of funds sent are actually reaching those in need? So that's a huge overhead, 45% overhead. What are you doing? Renting buildings, right? Like, is this a Brookfield subsidiary? And Oxfam gets results for reporting A-, demonstrated impact low. So, I mean, obviously they need $83 million more to be medium impact, right? Need for funding, I don't really care about that, but 54% cents to the cause for $1 donated after overhead costs of fundraising and administrative and management, excluding surplus. 54 cents are available for programs. Wow, 54 whole cents, eh? Whew. Guess we should invest more taxpayer dollars in that Ponzi scheme. Like, what in the hell? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So that's the Liberals' campaign. And we're going to go and talk kind of more tightly about Carney's campaign and the CPC a little bit. But we've got to talk about tariffs, because yesterday the universe was collapsing in on itself in Ontario, because that was the end of the province and so on and so forth. And everybody was saying counter tariffs are the key. Counter tariffs are going to fix this. And that's not true. And everybody knows that's not true, except our leadership, apparently. But Rupa highlights this very interesting communication from Donald Trump, noting he's not talking about Canada as the 51st state, and he's referring to Prime Minister Carney as Prime Minister Carney. Notable things after dealing with Donald Trump. And Rupa says Trump refers to Mark Carney as PM, does not refer to him as governor or Canada as the 51st state, assumes that Carney will win the election, and says the outcome will be good for both countries. Generally positive tone from Trump. This is clearly a pivotal win, or a political win, for Carney. And here's what Trump said on Truth Social. He says, I just finished speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. It was an extremely productive call. We agree on many things, and we'll be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election to work on elements of politics, business, and all other factors that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't really put anything in, like, I'm not putting a lot of stock into this communication, because I feel like there's another shoe that's going to drop, or something to that effect. But again, as far as I understand what the communication from the White House was yesterday, the April 2nd tariffs don't really change anything about what's happening unless you're doing something with car parts from China, and that might be EV batteries and things like that. So that'll change certain things, but like, I don't think at the scale people are expecting. And so, and with regards to meeting after the election, well, I mean, I don't think that Donald Trump is saying after you win the next election. I mean, maybe, but even so, we'll see, right? Do you think this is Donald Trump putting his finger on the scale for Mark Carney? Do you think that statement is an endorsement of Mark Carney saying, I'll see you after you win that election? I just don't see that. So let me know what you think. I don't think so. Here's Mark Carney, and gov.exe says Mark Carney confirms that Canada and the United States will begin working on a new economic and security relationship after the next election. So what I'm hearing from that is after the next election. Like, that's what I hear. It's not Mark Carney after the next election. It's whoever the leader is after the next election. They'll have to deal with that with Trump, right? And so, which is not a slap down because the election's happening, but like, hey, Good job. That's what I wanted you to do. And we'll deal with it after the election. Here's Mark Carney acknowledging that he hopes you choose him. I don't. But anyway, here's Mark Carney.
Today, President Trump and I spoke on the phone. We had a very constructive discussion, and we agreed to begin comprehensive negotiations about a new economic and security relationship between our two sovereign countries immediately following the federal election. I made it clear that I will be working very hard with my colleagues behind me. I will be working very hard over the next month to earn the right to represent Canada in those discussions.
Colleagues behind me. See all those people in high-vis vests that we bought earlier today? Yeah. So he's saying, I will work very hard to be the person you choose to represent you in those negotiations after the election that's coming up. So again, I don't see that as an endorsement of Mark Carney by Trump, but some people do. Ron says, not Governor Carney, very cordial, clearly an endorsement of Carney in our election, says Ron. Who knows? Trump could start calling him governor next week. I never expect anything normal. Still, why favor Carney? There could be good reasons or worrying reasons. Warren says last night Carney was calling for the end of all Canada-U.S. relations. This afternoon, Trump is on his best magnanimous behavior. So weird. Catcherd said yesterday or the other day, we should end all trade with Canada. And I was like, this is getting out of hand. Holy smoke, everybody, take a breath. So, because, I mean, if you end all trade with Canada, how does Canada become the 51st state, Catcherd? Really, honestly. Think here, man. Playing chess, not checkers. Here's Ryan again. He says, yesterday, Carney said our relationship with the United States was over. Today, it's good to go. Carney with the biggest flip-flop of the year. Our relation, like I said, Canada is the worst ex ever. The worst ex ever. Like I dreamed you were cheating on me. Like, oh, okay. And so I'm upset with you because you dreamed I was cheating on you. Okay. Crazy town. Crazy town. That's the kind of ex we are right now. It is an insane, insane thing. Juno News says, Bloc Québécois leader Yves Francois Blanchet accuses Mark Carney of overstepping his authority by committing Canada to post-election negotiations and recklessly putting key sectors on the table without a mandate. Here's Blanchet.
That he would still be the Prime Minister. Maybe he won't. Let's people make that decision. There's more than 30 days to go in the campaign. So this is a very, very preposterous attitude. And he also wrote that it was a global negotiation. We've been speaking about supply management this morning, and he said himself that he would protect that. So it shouldn't be on the table. But he just said to Mr. Trump, in order not to have a bad message afterwards, that everything was on the table. Everything is on the desk of the President of the United States, including lumberwood, supply management, culture, strategic minerals, and aeronautics, and everything is on the table. Where did he take the mandate to say such a thing, which might prove very dangerous?
Who gave him the mandate to say these things, right? And so Blanchet's itchy, pushing back. Bernier says, Bernier stresses a need for free trade with the United States, including the supply management agreement that tariffs the U.S. 250 to 300% on dairy, eggs, and poultry, says Bernier. So, yeah, interesting, different approaches, right? Blanchet is saying one thing, and Bernier is saying we need to go the opposite direction. We need to go right to zero. We need to have complete free trade with the United States ASAP. Liberal Party says we will always defend Canadian workers and our economy. Reuters is reporting Canada's Prime Minister says nothing off the table in response to the U.S. duties. I think that's, again, the whole nothing off the table rhetoric is rhetoric we've heard before, a lot before, and I don't think that that's not going to solve the problem, right? Like, I'll generically do whatever you want, except those things that we've previously refused to do. So, ball's in your court. Like, bullshit, right? Come on, man. Like, this is absolutely not a position that is tenable for any length of time. You have to firm up your position. You can't just say everything's on the table when really that's not true, right? And also, Carney doesn't have the mandate to negotiate. So, National Post is reporting we will build an all in Canada Auto Manufacturing Network, declared Carney in a statement. There's just one problem. Anyone with even a peripheral connection to Canada's auto sector is saying this makes zero sense whatsoever. Yep. And it seems like Carney doesn't really know what he's talking about. And again, this idea, and do you know he's a plagiarizer? We're going to get that in just a second. But everybody says he's intelligent. He's super smart. He's the smartest man in the room, governor of the Bank of Canada and governor of the Bank of England and all this other stuff. But he doesn't sound like the smartest guy in the room. And if you're the smartest guy in the room, you don't need to plagiarize, right? Come on, right? Really? So I don't believe it. And when you out yourself by talking nonsense about Canada building an all-in-Canada car manufacturing, auto industry that could rival selling cars to the United States, well, you're talking out of your bum. Like you're not making sense. You're just showing how idiotic you are. Bloomberg says the European Union is identifying concessions it's willing to make to Donald Trump's administration to secure the partial removal of the U.S. tariffs that have already started hitting the bloc's exports and that are set to increase after April 2nd. So interesting. We'll see how this whole thing plays out. And concessions, what does that mean? Is Europe going to a zero tax rate or a zero tariff rate for U.S. products? If they do that, will the U.S. reciprocate? Is that the solution? Is that what Donald Trump wants? Free trade for the world? Janice Irwin, who's an MLA out in Calgary, is being strange and saying she's upset because it's winter in Alberta. But then she starts dancing in a ridiculous dance because she's not down in Florida negotiating with Donald Trump about tariffs. And she calls Danielle Smith names and says she's negotiating with fascists. She says, not Alberta's premier who's in Florida hanging with fascists. She says she's on Team Canada. She's happy that she's on Team Canada. And honestly, Team Canada has not had any wins, right? Team Canada hasn't delivered any of the deliverables they've promised. They've delivered nothing. Pascal says, friendly reminder that to this day, 27th of March, 2025, Team Canada hasn't removed a single trade restriction on interprovincial trade within Canada. So people doing this virtue signal dancing, like TikTok dances, but on X and its politicians, they're out of touch and not actually doing anything effective. They're just dancing on TikTok, trying to feed their users, feeding the X algorithm and feeding their users ego, I guess, like the people who are watching them ego, their followers ego. It's weird. It's a weird distortion of reality. I'm not really all that interested in their antics. And I think people are walking away from it, but I don't know. It seems also that they have unending money to rent a friend who will show up, right? Let's move on to Mark Carney a little bit. And this is a National Post exclusive. Mark Carney faces plagiarism accusations for 1995 Oxford doctoral thesis. So he's super smart. If he was super smart, he wouldn't need to plagiarize his doctoral thesis. He would just be able to write it and defend it and the whole deal. JH says he's not talking about his conclusion that capitalism is dead on the campaign trail either. His PhD thesis rebukes government intervention in the economy. Now he wants billionaires in the government to run everything. Public-private partnerships, aka fascism. So interesting, right? Like in his doctoral thesis, he's saying the conclusion is capitalism is dead on the campaign trail. And he rebuked government intervention in the economy, but now he's completely flip-flopped on that, right? And so he didn't even believe the lie he put into his plagiarized doctoral thesis. And this is the National Post article on this whole thing. 10 instances of apparent plagiarism according to academics who reviewed the material. It'll be interesting. What would be more interesting is having like a side-by-side of the plagiarized bits, because if it's like 2 sentences here or there, then that's one thing. If it's entire passages or if it's entire conclusions, then that's another, right? So like Joe Biden's speech, Joe Biden got removed from presidential campaign in 1988 for plagiarism of a speech from England, and the news went crazy on it, and they showed Joe Biden's speech side by side with the British speech, and not to say they were like word for word the same, but they were paragraph for paragraph a similar sentiment, and it's very interesting to watch the two side by side. And people were incensed. People really didn't like it. Like Joe Biden had to leave. Also, Joe Biden's had brain surgery. Did you know that? Anyway, interesting history, but just crazy that all of the scandals of Mark Carney have not resulted in anybody asking for his removal of anything from leadership or anything like that. Nobody seems to care in the Liberal upper echelon. And isn't that strange? Don't you think they should care? I think they should care. It's very, very odd. Brian Lilly says, just trying to make sure that I follow all of this. Plagiarism is fine if you're a Liberal. Taking credit for the work of others or work you didn't do is fine if you're a Liberal, right? Right, Sajan? Right? He was stolen valor. Wasn't Sajan the one who was doing that? Liberal, no problem. Everything was fine. He got shuffled out, but not really. He got given another ministry. Using tax havens to avoid Canadian taxes is fine if you're a Liberal, right? Bermuda, right? Right, Mark Carney? Weird, right? Like, why doesn't anybody care about any of this? We're not told to care about this? The news isn't upset about this? I'm joking about it? Like, what's the problem here? Why don't people care? Goodness me. Pierre Poilievre says, serving ice cream and a Canada First plan to axe the sales tax on homes to save you $65,000. Build Canada First with shovel-ready zones. Train 350,000 workers in boots, not suits. Cut your taxes to save your family or a family almost $2,000. Bring home a $5,000 Canada First TFSA top-up. That's what it means to put Canada First for a change. And so this is very ABC campaigning. In contrast to the multiple scandals hitting the Liberals, from leadership scandals with the Bermuda tax dodging, with all of the stuff I've just laid out, plagiarism, et cetera, for Mark Carney, this election should be a cakewalk. Unfortunate that the news and media and like talking heads and even some online personalities as well and like polling stations and all sorts of stuff with 1,000 people polls, give me a break, making it seem like this is a much tighter race than it should be. There's no way the Liberals should even have any. I don't think they should have any seats. In Ontario, when Kathleen Wynne imploded, the party imploded too. And at this point in time, the Liberal Party is a sick shadow of its former self, like an emaciated shadow of its former self. There was a time where the Liberal Party had something to offer people. At this point in time, it doesn't offer people anything but hate and a crooked ideology. And I think that it's strange that there's anybody who's interested in it at all. Now, like Poilievre's CPC offers more, but I think it's a globalist party. So you'd have to really turn your blinders on to walk into that trap, because I think it's a trap. But I digress. They're doing ABC, here's our platform, here's what we're going to do. And in the face of this imploding Liberal Party, they should be doing better. So what's going on with the polls? What's going on with the reporting of the polls? And people should have questions, right? In Quebec, the Conservatives don't usually do well in Quebec, okay? The Bloc Québécois is, like Quebec is painted blue, but not Liberal or Conservative blue in a lot of the maps that I see for seats, right? But in Quebec, Legault is encouraging people to give the CPC a second look. This doesn't usually happen. Usually it's Liberal or Bloc. And even though the Bloc was pretty well a dead party up until, 2019, 2021. Regardless, it's interesting that Legault is saying, yeah, people should think about this. And CCFR says Premier Francois Legault wouldn't tell Quebecers explicitly who to vote for, but praised Pierre Poilievre for promising Quebec would have almost full control over its own immigration. This is a win for Quebec, something we've been asking for a long time. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the CPC is being endorsed by premiers in Quebec. That is unusual to say the least. So what's going on with all of that? The Liberals can't be all that strong. They depend on Ontario and Quebec for a lot of their seats, and neither are going to show up in this coming election. So we'll see how it all plays out. Also, our elections are rigged. Make no mistake about that. They are absolutely rigged. At every stage that they could possibly be rigged, they're rigged. At the advertising stage, at the candidacy stage, all sorts of different stages of rigging. Dominion, leadership, right? In the party leadership, rigged. Ask Ruby Dalla, right? Ask Maxime Bernier. So all of these things, it goes to a stacked, rigged election, I think. Maybe hard to see, but I think it does go to a stacked, rigged election. So regardless of all of this rhetoric and stuff, it's really just about selling Canadians a rigged result, I think, ultimately. And so, I mean, we'll see how it all plays out, right? We've got to say goodbye to the stream, and sorry about that all, but it's lovely to see you and hope to see you tomorrow. And we'll carry on. I've got a hockey game this morning. I'm doing a skills competition, so that's why the early show. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.